the next episode.
Yo, I'm Devin Reed, and I'm on a mission to build a bigger and more inspired career as a marketer, creator, and entrepreneur. I've spent 10 years in sales and marketing, become head of content for $2 billion tech companies, and scaled my side hustle, The Reader, to 6 figures. And now I'm ready to level up my creativity and earning power to hit the next level. Let's ride. But I need more than tips, tricks, and dopamine hits. I want inspiration and expertise that's gonna help me reach my potential. And damn it, I wanna have fun doing it. So I'm traveling America for candid, street-level conversations about creativity, marketing, and playing by your own rules. You'll hear the stories behind the success, unfiltered conversations, vulnerable moments, and practical advice to help you grow your career, confidence, and income. Are you ready? This is Read Between the Lines, the show for people who want to achieve phenomenal results. Today, we're in Chicago, and I'm here to talk to Eddie Shleyner. Eddie is the founder of VeryGoodCopy.com. He's a prolific content creator, and he's hands down the most talented copywriter I've ever met. Eddie stands out above the rest because he has a timeless style. He's kind of like an OG sushi chef. He focuses on the fundamentals, quality ingredients, and consistency over time. In today's conversation, you're gonna learn how to develop a unique style that stands out from your competition, how to stay inspired as a creator, plus what it really takes to be a successful entrepreneur. Are you ready? Let's ride. I'm very excited for this conversation. I don't know,
too, man.
I think I've told you this, but when I had the premise of the show, I was like, we need to write, I was working with David, the creative director, I was like, we need to write a pilot in a way. And so even though I had not reached out to you yet, and even though the show hadn't taken form, I had this episode as the pilot outline, which is we're gonna go to Chicago, we're gonna talk to Eddie Shleyner, and we're gonna talk about copywriting and creativity, because that is your thing. But the story that I really wanna start with was the article that you wrote, which was the normalization of plagiarism. Mm-hmm. And so I have to say, this was the most frustrating piece of content you've ever written, not because of what you said, but because of what happened. And so if it's cool with you, I want to start there.
Sure.
So I think it was about 6 months ago, you woke up and your phone was buzzing. Text messages, emails, people were like, is this you? People posting side-by-sides, posts. And what happened was somebody had ripped off your work, posted it as their own, and people in your circle spotted it, noticed it was your work, and then shared it back to you.
Yes.
So walk me through that. Like, walk me through that morning of, you know, I know how it is. You check your phone maybe right when you're in bed or like shortly after.
Yeah.
Probably seeing if mom texted back or any like important emails.
Yeah.
And you're getting all these notifications like you got ripped off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say, like, this was not a fun experience. Like, writing that article was not cool. It was more of a sad experience. It was sad for me. I felt sad for the plagiarist. I felt sad for, you know, our industry and the discipline and kind of what it's going through right now. And so it was really frustrating. And so it wasn't exciting at all. If anything, I was just, you know, walking around with my asshole like this all week, you know what I mean? Because it's fucking tense, you know? It's like, it's conflict and it sucks. And so I didn't really take any joy in it. There wasn't any pleasure. If anything, there was satisfaction knowing that I was talking about something important, at least something that I thought was important, something, you know, that I thought was really afflicting the industry and the people in it. So it's not a fun thing to do. That's not the type of content that I usually create. It's not the things that I usually write about. But it felt really relevant at that time. And but yeah, you basically nailed it. I mean, I woke up, I had, I don't know, maybe 50 messages.
Really, that many?
Yeah,
damn.
a ton. Because the guy has a large audience, and so a lot of people saw it, and it was all sorts of mediums, right? It was text messages, it was emails, it was all sorts of, you know, it was DMs, it was everything. And people were just like, either they were like, hey, this is 100% you, and they were like, some people actually sent me like a side-by-side, or they were like, hey, this sounds like something that you've written before. Is this you? So it was basically just like people that I'm friends with or people that have followed me closely for a while, just giving me like a heads up, which happens a lot actually. It's
really?
not, it's not unusual. I would say like maybe once every couple weeks,
Wow.
I get a message about, hey, I saw your work under somebody else's name, or I saw your work somewhere else, you know, not giving you credit. But this was remarkable because it was the guy had a much larger audience, and it was substantial. And so I think when that happens, it kind of changes the situation.
So what happened was the plagiarist. We'll call him the plagiarist.
Please, yeah.
I'm not gonna I won't say the name. I actually don't remember the name, and I didn't let myself remember the name just in case it slips. So we're not gonna out him. We'll get to that in a second though. But what happened was it was a writer, almost like air quoting writer, as you did in your article. Which, by the way, I said it's the most frustrating thing you've ever written. I also picked it to start this conversation because I genuinely think it is my favorite and maybe the best thing you've ever written.
Oh.
Because the way that you broke it down was way nicer than I would have done. I went into like battle rapper mode where I was like, I would have just lit this guy up and like try to end his career. But that was the emotional Devin, you know, in the moment. And I think I was also mad on behalf of my friend. And I was extra mad because this guy has 130,000 LinkedIn followers, says he's a writer, coaches people, I think sells courses on writing and all this stuff. But there is, what, 7 lines of maybe 12, like a 12 sentence post, and maybe like 7 are literally verbatim, little chunks, like side by side.
Yeah, I mean, it was piffy.
Obvious.
It was piffy. It wasn't, I guess, like as far as like the entire article, like, or the post, like how much of it was plagiarized, yeah, maybe, you know, 50-60%, but it was piffy, and the amount of copy isn't really the point. I think it was just the fact that it was a copy and paste swipe, you know, that somebody copy and pasted something, put it in their swipe file, which isn't even really how you're supposed to use swipe files, right? So put it in their swipe file, and then decided to just take the whole thing and take credit for it, and right down to the commas, down to the spelling of words. So it was really clear and really obvious. And, you know, when I reached out to my friends and people that, you know, I trusted, I admired, for advice about it, you know, they had very similar sentiments. They were like, yeah, man, this is clearly a case of plagiarism. And so it wasn't necessarily how much copy was. It wasn't like paragraphs and paragraphs, pages and pages. It was just the fact that the act happened, and then everything that happened afterwards as well.
So when I meant how much, I just meant it was blatantly obvious, because it is 50%. I'm saying if there's 12 sentences and they're short sentences, and even half or whatever it is exactly, it's immediately clear. There was also, you said the spelling of words. I don't know anyone else that says hell yeah, but you put Y-E-H for yeah, like you say hell yeah.
That's
that's an Eddie thing. And so that's like, aside from the examples you shared that were verbatim, there was the hell yeah. Like, to me, if I had seen that post, which didn't see it until you shared it with me, isn't that like how Eddie writes? Like, that's his little thing, you know? And so, yeah, I don't care if it's 10%, 1%, ripping it off is unacceptable. It was just when you had showed me, because I was, you know, I was one of the people you called, and you're like, hey, Dev, how should I think about this and feel about this? I'm glad you didn't listen to me, because I think I was more pissed than you were. And it is the thing you had said, which is like, this guy goes to market saying, I'm an expert, and coaches people, and then turns around and rips off writers like you. So tell me what happened. So you saw the post, recognized it was yours immediately, obviously.
Yep.
And then you reached out to him.
Yep. I mean, it's somebody I knew. You know, it's somebody that I had worked with and at least been on friendly terms with. You know, I know this person. So I had him in my WhatsApp. I just texted him, and he, in so many words, was like, and, you know, everybody can go and like see the transcript, right? In the essay, I put the whole thing so that it was transparent and everybody could see it and read it. But I was just like, hey man, you know, this is wrong. You know, you got to take accountability for this. And he's like, I see where you're coming from, but I did not plagiarize. You know, he's like, I put this in my swipe file. I never cite anything that goes in my swipe file, or at least I didn't cite this. He's like, and so I used it, and that was really his excuse or his reasoning for not, you know, citing the source or giving credit where it's due. And obviously that's wrong, right? That's absurd. Either you're
clearly
deluding yourself or lying to other people, however you want to look at it. And so, yeah, I at a certain point I just kind of stopped talking to him about it. You know, after he was like, yeah, there's no way that I'm going to acknowledge this. He did.
Well, so hold on. You asked him though. You asked him to specifically acknowledge, like, I think, did you ask for to take it down or?
No, I said, look, man,
post.
I said, look, there's got to be some accountability for this.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can't. He's like, I can't do that. And I'm like, look, I'm doing the compassionate thing here. You know, if I,
he's like, doors.
Yeah, he's like, I thought that we had a supportive relationship, I think is what he said. And I was like, we do. And that's why I'm giving you this opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, if you can take control of the way that you address this, that is the compassionate thing to do. That is me being supportive of you. Yeah, he did not do that. So I wrote what I wrote. And look, you know what? I bet if he was like, man, you're right, I'm sorry about this. If he just did the right thing, you know, maybe I wouldn't have posted it. You know, I probably wouldn't have taken it to that point. But I think it's the way that he handled it, the gaslighting, the manipulation, everything that he was saying to me, the way that he was trying to make me feel crazy, like the way he was trying to make me feel like I was in the wrong. I think that was really the most triggering part for me, because look, like plagiarism happens, you know, accidental plagiarism happens a lot. You know, everybody's written something down, didn't cite the source. Everybody's like made a note, something they saw on TV, something somebody said, they made a note about it, didn't write down the source, and then you come back to it, and then it's like, geez, you know, where did this come from? That's a common problem. And it's just a matter of, like, first of all, being diligent and citing your sources and making sure that you're putting that stuff out there. And if you don't, just being able to address that and, like, maybe turning that into a teachable moment for 130,000 people that follow you, you know, and not turning it into some kind of, you know, elaborate lie that you start telling to kind of like cover your back. But it was the way that he treated me that I think really put me over the edge and made me upset and made me want to address it the way that I did.
I think you addressed it very well. I'm going to read. Can I read a bit of it?
Yeah, sure.
So I think the part, and I'm going to put the link in the notes. I highly recommend everyone listening and watching to read it. One, because it's a masterclass of what not to do if you are the plagiarist, and a great example of you of how to call somebody out. But you did it in like this journalistic way of almost like, hey, I'm just kind of like this experience. Unfortunately, it happened to you versus a third party. But you really broke down of like, here's what happened. Here's our interaction. And the thing that I was reading, I told you I was reading this morning, like 8 o'clock, drinking my coffee, and I'm seething at the gaslighting that happened. So I'm going to read a bit. So you wrote, and I knew, by the way, you wrote, this is a big deal. Like when you're calling, you know, you're confronting him and you're like, this is not a delete and move on moment. This is a big deal. My insight was like, oh, Eddie's pissed. Like Eddie's on one. And so he responds and he goes, really? I'm shocked that you see it that way. I'm telling you, I 100% did not do this with a pinch of plagiarism, Eddie. I can delete the post, but I cannot publish a post stating something I haven't done. This is a huge misunderstanding. Because of the supportive relationship I was hoping we had, I am shocked you are asking this of me. I will delete the post. That's as far as I can go. If you feel like I deserve to be called out for this, then that's your decision I will respect. But I respect you enough to know that I would never do this to you. Thought you already knew that. And then your sentence is, you too are shocked by the plagiarist's spectacular gaslighting. And it's funny because that was what was in my brain as your reader, was like, holy shit, this dude is crazy. Like, this dude's on one. This makes no sense.
Yeah, and look, I can't speculate as to like what's going on in his mind, or if he really believes what he's saying, or if he's just like, you know, if you know, his kind of like career is flashing before his eyes, or whatever happened in his brain. But yeah, I tried to write about it. Yeah, to your point, I mean, I did try to kind of address it like a journalist and just kind of, you know, obviously it wasn't objective. I didn't, you know, I had my input and my feelings in there, but I also wrote it in the second person, you know, so that people can kind of put themselves, it was easy to put yourself into that situation. You know, I used you, and I walked through the series of events the way that they unfolded. And I just told the story that way. And yeah, I mean, I wrote it, and then, yeah, I was thinking, you know, if he does the right thing, you know, maybe I don't post this thing, or, you know, if it works out, like maybe I don't post it. But like I said, he was just so wrong in the way that he handled it, that I did.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons I like the article, because I think you can learn something no matter kind of your perspective. Like if you know Eddie and you're a fan and a friend like I am, there's that angle. Then there's the angle of maybe I am plagiarizing and not knowing it, or plagiarizing and not knowing the severity, right? I think there could be some junior writers and maybe junior marketers who, like, I don't want to claim ignorance to justify, but, you know, sometimes like, oh, I didn't know I should be citing so much, right? It's like, I kind of give some credit, like, you know, you kind of educate them a little bit. And then there's my own perspective aside from you, which is I have a decent sized following. I am a marketer, a relatively senior writer, and like, I've had this happen to me. And so it taught a lot of different lessons of kind of the different perspectives and bringing something very real to light. And kind of, I think, giving people a decision of like, who are you going to be in this? How are you going to behave moving forward? I think it's impossible to read that article and not change your perspective, no matter how, you know what I mean, which one of those perspectives you're coming from. I had it happen to me probably a year ago now, which was a younger guy. I don't know, early 20s. I'm now mid 30s. He's, you know, you know, and so he's probably 22, 23. And he's one of these guys who, you know, tagline something like, you know, I'll help you make millions of dollars off SEO, steal my template, all this stuff. And I'd seen him in passing, and I'm like, you know, kind of a knockoff of Justin Welsh, if I'm being honest. And that's no knock on Justin. I know and like him and respect him a lot, but you can tell he, like, you know, is doing more copying of Justin than inspiring from him. So I kind of seen his content around and scrolling LinkedIn one day, and man, I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Those 4 lines look real similar. Like, I'm pretty sure I wrote those 4 lines. I'm thinking for a second, had a minute. So I go back to my timeline and I find the post and I go, it's the same thing, Eddie, the exact same thing. Actually a little less obvious because yours was so much more. Maybe mine was like 20% of his post. And I got just flush with like confusion and anger because I felt like disrespected. I felt slighted because it's the same thing. There's no way you wrote that without seeing my stuff. And you could have just put in a quick hat tip at Devin Reed for this thing, right? And that's all good. Still not my favorite thing to take my work and like get a bunch of engagement and then give me like credits at the bottom, but at least it's something. And so I pull it side by side. You know, we gave our wives a lot of credit before the show started. I go to my wife and I go, yeah, okay, here's this. And she had no context. I just go, here's this and here's mine. And she lit up. She's like, you need to expose him. She's like, she's a Scorpio. So she's like, you know, the stinger came out and she's like, you need to expose him, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I thought about it for a little bit. Now I've gotten a little bit better at acknowledging when I'm feeling very emotional, that is not the time to respond. It is the time to just think and at best cool off and then tomorrow make a decision. And I decided not to do anything about it. And the reason why was he had around the same-ish followers, which is kind of wild to me, but like that's its own maybe, you know, insecurity or whatever, but he had like 50, 60,000 followers, whatever. But I didn't do it because he's a lot younger than me. And I was like, the worst case is this backfires. People don't see the message and what's wrong with what he did, and they see a guy punching down at like a younger kid, a younger generation. Mm-hmm. So I didn't end up doing anything. Mm-hmm. And then when I read your article, it just felt like the coach I needed. You know what I mean? I wish the timelines were flipped. I wish your article had come first. But yeah, man, it was just like, it's like wild. Like, I don't know what to do, honestly. Like, what is your perspective? Is it even possible to prevent your work from being plagiarized?
I don't think so. I think you could take some steps to maybe catch the plagiarism, you know. You can't you can't incept people before they do it, but you know, like I have a course and I hired like an anti-piracy agency, and I just pay them a monthly retainer and they go and they take down all of the free versions. Wow,
so people have taken your course and go put up free versions?
Oh yeah, they do with every course, I think. Yeah, I mean, they go up. You know, it's usually you have to like subscribe to, you know, their platform or their network, and then inside you get like access to a whole bunch of courses, or you could buy it a la carte at a steep discount. But like, who knows, you know, if you want to go do that, go do that. I don't know if you want to get malware on your computer or whatever, like whatever comes with that. Yeah. But it's just the way to stop the proliferation of like piracy. So that's one way to do it, but that's more of like that's more for a product, I think. And, you know, this was just one instance. So I think, you know, the advice that I got from my mentors and like, you know, people that I reach out to about this kind of stuff and talk to about this kind of stuff is, you know, if it's somebody that doesn't necessarily have a following, then don't do anything. You know, reach out. Well, don't do anything publicly, I guess. Reach out to them and say, if you want, you know, and say, hey, you know, I see this is going on. Can you please stop doing this? You know, and maybe tell them why you think it's wrong. Maybe not. It's all a matter of how you want to handle it, you know, privately. But if it's somebody with an audience, then I think it's important to call that person out first in private and see if they want to like correct the issue independently. And if not, then yeah, bring people's attention to it. And if possible, do it in an entertaining way, you know?
Yeah.
Like I think that's part of the trick is like at the end of the day, people are reading this essay and they're reading it like a story, like a narrative. Yeah. You know, and they're reading it and it turns into this kind of like page turner because you're like, well, what's going to happen next in this event? And I think that's why I wrote it that way, because I was like, okay, yes, it's cathartic for me and yes, like I'm shining a light on this issue, but also I want to do it in a way that people are going to want to read. Yeah. You know, I want to do it in a way that people are going to want to engage with and stick around with. It's just a much better experience than saying, hey, this person, you know, look at this side by side, this, you know, and calling somebody out and just having that kind of like vitriol be there. Yeah. That's not what this was about.
Well, it's like too, is like in a way I was like, you're a victim. You were the victim of plagiarism. But the article and your approach to it is not that of a victim. Like you didn't victimize yourself. Because you're like, oh, poor me, and like, look how bad this is, which is ironically what he did when you called him out for plagiarizing. Like he went to his audience, like, look what happened to me. You know, I don't know if you said your name, but like someone reached out and look at this accident. Can you imagine that it happened to me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you guy, because you know what you did. But that's why I think one of the reasons I know I'm talking about the article a lot, because it doesn't have that vibe. When you read the whole thing, you're not like, oh, Eddie's super pissed or Eddie's really emotional. It was like something happened to Eddie that could happen to me and has. And he's kind of giving back, which is these learnings of what you can do. And so that's why I really liked it. And one of the things that's, I think, really validating, it was validating to me, so hopefully it is for the listeners, was, you know, you had this big like H2 sentence of, you know, there's really not much, and I'm paraphrasing, there's not much originality on the what, because everything's kind of been talked about before.
Yes.
But it's the how that is uniquely ours and needs to be protected.
Yes.
And that was validating to me, one, because I think I've always, like, at least earlier in my career, like always trying to create something new. Like I have to come up with a new framework or a new idea. And there was things I did create that I swore were new. And then a year or two later, I'm reading something, I'm like, oh, this is 80 years old. And I'm really late to the game. But what it also did was kind of give me a new outlook of, okay, cool, that takes the pressure off. I don't have to try to create new stuff. I just have to take my perspective, apply it to it. That becomes the how, and that is my thing. And so that for me as a creator and as a writer was like liberating in a way and motivating. And especially because, again, someone that I look up to is like, if you're going through this, now we're kind of like going, you know what I mean? Going through it together as creators, and it brought us together through a belief. Right? Like if you read this article, you kind of have to believe what now I and you believe, which is don't plagiarize, but it's all good as long as you cite people and remember, focus on your connectedness. How are you taking existing ideas and building off of that? Because that's what the whole thing is about. Yes. The whole thing is about, and you say it a bunch, is standing on other people's shoulders, giving them credit and pushing the craft forward.
Yes. Yeah, that word is key right there. Connectiveness, connectivity. Eugene Schwartz said it. You know, a better word for creativity is connectivity, you know, because creativity is kind of an empty word if you think about it. It doesn't really tell you how to be creative. How people are creative is by, you know, connecting disparate things in a flush way, you know, and the more interesting those things are, and the more disparate they are, and the more flushly you can connect them, the better that idea is, you know. Yeah. So absolutely, don't think about it as creating. Don't think about it as making something new. Think about it as connecting these things, these parts, in a way that's novel and interesting, and maybe a way that people haven't seen before. That's definitely at the core of what we do, I think, as copywriters and content marketers. And also, yeah, I mean, I was a victim of plagiarism, but like at the end of the day, who isn't?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I wrote the piece the way that it did, that I didn't use the first person, that I used the second person, that I wanted to create this, like, I wanted to give people a timeline. I wanted to give people kind of the play-by-play. I showed people the transcript. And I also blurred out the dude's name. Like, I don't hate that guy, you know? Like, here's a guy that made a mistake. I really don't know what he's going through in life. I really don't know what his motivations are for acting the way that he did.
You saw the bigger picture and an opportunity for a bigger impact.
And I tried to do the best I could. And like I said, I got a lot of help from a lot of people, yourself included. And I don't know if those people want to be mentioned on camera or not, but they know who they are, and you know, they certainly like helped walk me through that. And that's just another testament to like community and what it means to like, you know, we're in our own little corner of the internet and we do our own very specific thing. We have our own very specific discipline, and we're all kind of in this together, you know? It's like that Ubuntu concept, you know, that like South African concept of like, you know, you can't be a person on your own. You can only be a person through other people, you know? Well, you can't be a copywriter on your own. You can only be a copywriter through other people. You can only be a marketer through other marketers, you know? And so I think that's really important. And I think the amount of help and the amount, like, just how much time my friends put into that event in my life, and like giving me the, like, just the amount of good advice that I got, and just the amount of effort that everybody put into like helping me through it. Yeah, it was just testament to that idea that, hey, we're all kind of in this together. And you know,
I mean, that's a testament to the reputation you've built. Like, you're a writer's writer. You know what I mean? Like, you're a writer's writer, the marketer's marketer, and you're a craftsman. I joked with you before, but it's true. Like, you know, you're the OG sushi chef. You focus on the fundamentals. Yeah, you know, you focus on quality ingredients and consistency over time. And I think that is both your philosophy. I mean, again, I'm speculating, but it's my perception. And I think it has become your style in a way, right? Which, like, when you read your newsletter, Very Good Copy's newsletter, there is a unique connectiveness that I think you bring, which is, if you slap the reader on your work, it would be weird. People, this is, you know, Devin had a stroke or something, because this is not how he writes. This is how Eddie Shleyner writes. And so I want to talk a little bit about developing that unique style, right? So you do a lot of things differently, because I think you've studied, or I know you've studied, you know, the direct response greats, the copywriting legends, and then you take that and you apply it to today's modern scenarios through your own life, or in B2B, you know, tech, and in marketing, where we met, you know, like, you know, dabbling together on the interwebs. So I'm kind of curious if we can pivot a little bit, like, where did your unique style come from?
Well, I was a literature major. I studied English. I studied literature in college. And I focused on minimalist authors. So I focused on Raymond Carver, Bukowski, Ernest Hemingway. And I was really interested in those guys because of their word economy, because of how much they said and the pictures that they put into my head in so few words. And it was just a fascinating thing. It was like watching a movie on this page that I was reading, and it wasn't even that much detail. There wasn't even that much information on the page. And a lot of those guys were using a technique called realism, or realist writing, where you actually, you omit a lot of the details because you don't talk about what the character is thinking or feeling. You only talk about what the character is doing or saying. And when you do that, you open up a void. You open up a hole. And that hole is basically an opportunity for the reader to put their own life experiences, their own worldviews into the story. And so the more I did that, the better I got at that. But that's not very good copy completely, right? Like, very good copy is a mix between that and the direct response work that I was reading after I graduated. After I got a job as a copywriter, and after I decided this is what I wanted to do, I started diving into those. I started diving into that work, and it was just kind of like a combination of this literary style and what I was reading from Gary Bencivenga and Gary Halbert, and, you know, How's this going, by the way?
It's going, I like it.
Yeah?
I'm excited.
Okay.
Selfish, I would say it's a delicate balance, because one of the most dangerous things you could say is like, well, I liked it as the creator, so it must be good. But luckily, I am the audience, so that's actually a good barometer for me. Where like, if I'm learning and I'm having fun,
yep,
that comes through in the content.
Okay.
Every single time. And if you do terribly, I just cut it.
Right.
And
well, that's what that's what I'm hoping for, man. Because, dude, I go on some podcasts and they like, they every fucking word is in there. Every fuck up, everything that I did is in there, and I'm just like, man, you guys didn't edit this at all.
Those are bad creators.
Yeah, but then I'll like talk to them and be like, hey guys, like, you guys really like that part? And they're like, yeah, that was great. That was authentic. That was like, you know what I mean? And like, and to me, yeah. I'm looking at that shit and I'm like, oh my God, like I hear every I hear every I hear every like stutter, you know, everything that I'm doing. I'm like, I'm just like dissecting it, and they look at it and they're like, this sounds like a normal person talking. And I look at it and I'm like, it sounds like a fuck up talking, you know? So it's like, it's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to like walk that line. Or I'll show my wife, or, you know what I mean? I'll be like, listen to this shit, you know? And she'll be like, sounds great to me.
Yeah.
You know? And I guess, and I'm like, well, you got to say that, you know what I mean? And she's like, no, really though. You know, like, how do people talk? You know, you don't talk like a book. And I think that's like, it's such a problem for me, because I write clearly, concisely. Brevity is something that I always strive for. You know what I mean? And so I'm trying to write this way every single day, and then I come on shows with like the expectations that I have to like talk that way as well, and I don't talk that way at all. I have ADD, you know, a lot of shit in my head doesn't stay straight. You know what I mean? Like, sitting down and writing is my safe space, and then getting up and talking, you know, unless I got something in front of me, you know, that I just feel like I'm not putting it together the same way as I would on paper. And like, something that's been really hard is like equating these two things, you know, just convincing myself that it's okay to not be the same person on paper as you are, you know, on a podcast or talking or whatever.
Well, you said equating, they're not equal. They're not equal. And we talked yesterday at lunch, you're like, I'm used to control. You said the word control, which is, I think, the word that is like the key word here, which is when you're writing, it's just you and the paper, and no one sees anything until you decide.
Exactly.
I can spend time on it. I can come back and refine it. I can be brief. I can be this. I can think of an idea 4 weeks later, come back and add it.
Yes.
I'm very aware that you don't get to do that here. But I also want to give you your flowers in a way, which is myself and everyone I introduce you to, at least in my circle, they like both versions of you. That's why I had you on the show. If I was like, Eddie's a great writer, but he's terrible on camera, I would not have had you here. One, because I don't want to put you in a position to feel bad and fail. And two, because I don't want to be put in a position to be bad and fail.
Yes.
But you have to, and the fun thing too with this show is specifically the style, talking about my connectiveness, is the imperfections and vulnerabilities, because that's what people resonate with. If you came on the show perfectly scripted, I actually would be a little disappointed, not in you, but in the product that we created, because this show is about being relevant. Like, I want people to resonate and be and feel like, oh, those experiences are my experiences, or I've also felt those sorts of things. And that comes with ums and cursing and trailing off and wait, hold on, what were we gonna say? And tangents, and then coming back to tangents. Like, to me, that makes great content, or really great conversation.
Yes. And
it's like when me and you hang out and we get on a Zoom call and we're riffing back and forth, I'm not like, I don't get off the call, wow, you a lot more briefing on this newsletter. Wow, guy's kind of wordy in person. Like, no, it's like a different style. It's like, oh, cool, I get Eddie in this way and it is controlled, and I know that. It's like polished Eddie, and then I get the, just, not that you're unpolished, but the less polished version. I like both, and I think people do too.
Yeah, dude, polish is a good word. It's like, when I write these things, these little articles, essays, whatever you want to call them, it's really exciting to be able to bring things full circle, you know? Like a documentarian, you know, you watch a documentary, everything in that documentary has basically already happened. The story, the narrative has already happened, you know, it's real life, it's already happened, and then it's up to the filmmaker, the documentarian, to be like, how do I want to present this? What order do I want to present this story in? And how do I make it clean at the end and satisfying at the end? And that's how I look at writing. That's how I look at these articles. I want it to be, you know, all of this stuff has already happened. Everything in copywriting has already happened. There is nothing new in copywriting. Like you were saying, there's nothing that, you know, there's nothing new under the sun in general, but especially when it comes to marketing. The human condition is what it is. Like, human psychology is what it is. You know, like we are playing off the back of that. So I'm not making anything new up. I'm just figuring out a way to tell that story in a new way, you know, and put it together in a new way.
So I have a very healthy amount of envy for you, which is like,
same, man.
No, I mean, honestly, which is like, I look up to you because you're very talented, and I'm like, I want to be more like you in certain ways, because we were talking about this last night too, was like, you watch Vice, with Vice Media, Vice TV.
Yes.
You get
Viceland,
one thing,
yeah.
like Viceland, you get your inspiration from that, and then you go make a minimalist, very good copy.com.
Yeah.
I watch Fuck That's Delicious with Action Bronson. I get more tattoos. I have a red beard, and I put yo on my merch and on my stuff. So it's funny how we have the same inspiration, but we go different ways with it. What I also really respect though is that you stay true to like your style and your fundamentals, and you don't like chase trends, right? I mean, you take advantage of it. You do carousels and stuff. Like, you take advantage of the current consumption behaviors of your audience, but you don't zigzag back and forth on the next wave. You know what I mean? You can tell it's Eddie at all times. And you also are prolific in that you've been writing on LinkedIn for I don't even know how many years. You got over 100,000 followers, so you're doing something right. And it's been steady growth. You got what, 60, 70,000 readers on your newsletter. And like I said, the style and the quality is consistent over time. I wonder, how do you prevent burnout? Like, where are you getting your inspiration from to continue to create at such a high level?
I guess there are a few questions in there. I mean, the burnout piece is real. And sometimes I do get burnt out and I just leave. I just don't, I don't necessarily get burnt out on writing. I get burnt out on the other part of the business, which is promoting, which is marketing in earnest, which is like getting, you know, circulating your work around the internet. That is hard for me, because I am a solopreneur, I guess, you know, one person business. You know, my wife takes care of a lot of the, I guess the business parts of it. You know, I focus more on the creative element, but yeah, I do get burnt out in that regard, and so I just leave. I just take 3 months and I focus on a big project, and you won't see me online. You know, and I think that that's a healthy thing to do, and I think that there's a lot of like fetishizing, you know, posting every day and following like the growth trends and doing exactly what you see all of the other big creators doing, and you know, to grow the way they have. And you know, that'll burn you out, man. You got to take a step back. And so I do it probably twice a year. I'll take, you know, anywhere from 2 to 3 months off, and I just won't be around. I'll be focusing on something else. I'll be focusing on a big project, like I said, spending more time with family, just like focusing on myself. And then when I'm ready, I come back and I market again. I mean, you know, it's all about enjoying the process. It's all about enjoying growing this thing, enjoying building this thing. I don't have any plans on stopping, you know? And then also it's like, okay, so you hit a milestone. You hit 100,000 followers or whatever, hit 100,000 subscribers. Now what? So now you just got to do that again.
You get an award in the mail, and then your kids are more proud of you, right?
Right. Right. But really, like, what do you do?
I'm kidding. Like, your kids never, I joke, like, my kids never once come up to me like, hey, Daddy, how many followers do you have? Or, you know, they don't care about that stuff.
Yeah. And I think the real risk is like, okay, so I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to kill myself again to get another 100,000, another 100,000, or like, it's like, it's not going to end. Just keep on doing it. Keep on doing it and enjoying the process, and like really learn to love the process of it. Really learn, like, it's a cliche, but it's like, that's actually the truth. That's actually how you avoid it, you know, especially if you're working for yourself, your own business. It's like, really enjoy making the work, choose something that you really like to do, enjoy making it, enjoy doing it. Don't really think about the final product. Don't think about how many people are going to like it, how many people are going to reshare or whatever. Just do something that you're proud of doing, and take your time doing it. And when you need a break, take a break, and just know that you have time. You have the time to keep on growing and growing and growing.
I appreciate that a lot, because I've experienced that myself, like trying to, you know, getting the newsletter over to 10K, and then I'm like, okay, what's next? Trying to grow, and what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy. And I found myself in these, like, I don't want to say rabbit holes, but these like cycles of like growth obsession, honestly. and moving. When I started the newsletter, it was all about the craft. Like, I'm having fun, I'm sharing what I know. I like the response it's getting because people are saying it's helping them, not like number of opens and likes, but like literally someone in, you know, marketing saying this was super helpful. That to me is like very gratifying. And then I found myself in this I slid down the slope of like, I'm really more focused on the growth and how fast am I growing and not the craft. And I realized, I don't know, it's maybe sometime mid last year where I was like, I don't even like writing the newsletter right now, or like, don't even really want to write LinkedIn content because all I'm thinking about is like, will this resonate? Will I get the engagement? Will it grow? Will it grow? And we've talked about this a little bit and you've helped kind of shift my mindset back, but I don't care if it's cliche, like trust the process and enjoy becoming great, not being great is like my mantra in my head. And that's like even launching this show, when it launched at the time of recording last week, I've had a couple people like, you know, how are the numbers, or like, did you hit your goals? And I honestly don't have metric goals for the show. I'm trying to create something as entertaining and high impact as possible. And I'm trying to have fun doing it. Yeah. So like on Wednesday when we launched, my goal was, I talked to the team, did we execute on the vision we had 3 months ago? Yeah. And we did. Yeah. And that is the win. Absolutely. It was gratifying to me. And then later, yeah, of course, we want people to consume it. We want to look at the numbers, but I never once was like the day is won or the week is successful or the launch is a win because of a YouTube view count or subscriber count on Apple. And I know that's hard to do when you're at a B2B company because there's so much pressure. But as a head of content at B2B, I wanted a break from that. I'm like, all I have is MQLs and pipeline goals and expectations. For this show, doing it myself was like really all about the creative process. And hopefully at the end of this, like, I'm a better host. I'm smarter from talking to people like you, and the people watching and listening are like, wow, this is something that will resonate with me for a long time. And hopefully if someone finds this conversation in 2, 3, 5 years, it's still relevant. Yes. It still makes sense at that time.
Yes. Yeah. Do it for yourself. You nailed it, man. Do it for yourself. And the other things will fall into place. And like, there's going to be people that are like, well, yeah, but there are economics to this. We do need to make a living. We do need to make money. And that's true. And so the way that I approach that is kind of like oscillating between growth and craft. And I think that that's where those breaks come in. For a really long time, I was stuck on that hamster wheel of growth. And I had left my job. I left it in the middle of the pandemic. There was a lot of pressure on me, internal, external, to be successful, to grow an audience, to monetize, and to make a living. You know what I mean? And so growth was top of mind constantly. And there was just a period of several years where all I was doing was the best work that I could, but I was always in a way prioritizing growth, the tactics that I was using, the growth loops that I was using, posting, collaborating, doing everything I could to make sure that the brand proliferated and was out there. And I guess that's what I'm saying is like after a certain point, you hit a certain milestone or you hit a certain marker where you're like, okay, I can make a living and I can be comfortable. And now this is the real rewarding part where I can make a living doing what I really like to do. Yep. I can make a living writing these things, and that's where growth kind of takes a back seat. And you have to just understand, that point is different for everybody. That part of the process, I think, is different for everybody, and you have to know yourself and know your situation well enough to know when it is. And I think the toxic part comes in when you don't take a step back and realize it, and you keep pushing forward, and that's when you burn out. That's when your relationships suffer. That's when you start to lose track of why you did this thing in the first place, why you fell in love with writing in the first place, or why you fell in love with marketing in the first place. Marketing is really just connecting with people. Marketing is really just understanding people. It's understanding the human condition, why people do the things that we do, why we react the way that we react to things. So marketing isn't this evil thing. Marketing is actually a benevolent thing. It's a really beautiful thing if you approach it the right way. And so, yeah, you gotta kind of you gotta know when to kind of shoot your shot, and then you gotta know when to pull back.
I might butcher a little bit, but I want to go into a specific example of your unique style, which is I get a newsletter from Eddie, and it always has this little preface of 366 words on creativity. 412 words on writing or 199 words on blank. That alone, I don't think I cannot imagine you came up with that, but you do use it every single time, I think. Why do you do that?
Well, dude, I definitely didn't create like the concept of, you know, letting people know what to expect, for sure. I mean, there was, you know, everywhere you go online, you either see like a bar, like this red or whatever color bar that says how much you got left in the article based on the scroll, or you see like time markers, you know, 3-minute read, 5-minute read, 10-minute read. I wanted to do something like that, but I wanted to do it differently. And I also wanted to let people know that every word in the essay was intentional. And so I think that was the way that came into existence. Is like, you know, if I say, hey, 366 words, then the subtext there is like, I was thoughtful about every single word that went in here. And really that's a commentary on copywriting in general. You know, every word in an ad, every word in a piece of copy really needs to kind of like hold its own, you know, and there shouldn't be any waste. It should be lean. And so I think maybe I was somewhere in the intersection of those things. That's where that came into play.
I had a feeling that's what you might say, and then I feel kind of dumb because I'm like, I don't know how long like if I was to take X amount of words and put it to minutes it takes to read, I'm like, I don't know how long it takes me to read 366 words. But I don't mind it. I like that you put it in there, and it does match your style. There's another thing about your style, which is if you're like, I'm going to present you with a newsletter, a new one from Eddie. I'm going to hold it for this example, and my eyes are closed. And it was like, give me your expectations. What do you think? I'd be like, well, first of all, it's going to have some picture at the top that you've manipulated in a, with like color or texture or something. He's going to tell me how many words are on the article. And then he's going to tell me a story, and it's going to be minimalist. And there's a gem in there. There's a lesson. Now, sometimes you call it out very blatantly. And then sometimes I think you kind of end the story and you pause for a second, and it sparks what I call long form thinking. And it's kind of up to me sometimes to kind of pull that gem out, right? How did I do so far?
I think that's very fine. I mean, you know, that's definitely an aspect.
Very fine.
That's definitely, hey, fine is better than great if you think about it. So like
I don't know, but I would love to hear more on how fine is better than great.
Well, they call it fine jewelry, I guess, but it's like this. It's like I want to create a story. That's what you're asking. Like what my
well, one, I was just saying my audit. Remember, I look at people's content strategy and I break it down, and I'm never perfectly right, but I like to kind of kick it back to them. I think one, as a creator for you, hopefully it's kind of validating in a way, like someone who reads my stuff, like, are they picking up on the things I'm doing?
Yes.
And then two, it gives me an opportunity to like either go deeper, or you might be like, actually, Dev, I do something else, and there's a reason for it. But I know the story is on purpose. You do it on every single one. There's never not a story.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely elements to every piece that I write that I know have to go in. Like, I know they have to go into the soup. So there's the story, the narrative, you know, the thing that frames the piece, and then there's the lesson. So the technique, the principle that I want people to learn about copywriting, about creative theory, about marketing. And then there's the word count. And if I can put those three things together in a flush way, then I know that I've created something that people will recognize as coming from me. So, I mean, that's the broad strokes. That's what I do. What you're mentioning is like, I think something called a zero ending, where you end a piece of writing abruptly and on a lesson that doesn't like punch you in the face.
Yeah.
But it forces you to kind of like evaluate what's going on deeply, and it stays with you after you're finished reading. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, that's a much more powerful piece of writing, because you're not just experiencing it on the page as you're reading, you're experiencing it after you leave and go walk the dog or make a sandwich or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's with you. And I think that that's something that everybody can strive for. And it's something that I definitely picked up from my education, you know, from being a literature major, from reading Raymond Carver, from reading Bukowski, you know, as poorly as he's aged, you know, he still did things that, you know, relevant today from a storytelling standpoint. So I think that's what you're referencing, and I do like to do that when I can. It's not always easy to fit in, but
I had a feeling that it was intentional because everything you do is intentional, but also I think it gives a bit of diversity to your work, where there's a style playbook, call it like a template, so to speak, the ingredients you just mentioned. And then there's also but like, let me keep my readers on their toes a little bit, give them a little bit of anticipation so they don't always know exactly what to expect, right? You still get the same value, so to speak. So I like that you have that diversity in your work. And I think it's really tricky to do.
A lot of what I write about, like I said, has already been talked about. There's been a lot of copywriters out there before me, the folks whose shoulders I'm standing on, who have taught me how to think like a copywriter, how to write like a copywriter. And their takeaways are always pretty pithy, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't need to find 10, 15 different ways to say exactly what they said. Just say what they said.
Yeah.
And that's what I always do. I always, I'm writing this book and I have this reference table with all of the articles that I'm putting in there. And there's one column there where I cite this, people that I reference, I reference in the article. 2/3, I think, of the book have articles that reference other creators, other copywriters, other marketers, because they said it well. They already said it so well. Like, why try to recreate that?
Yeah.
I just put it in there, and then I just try to put something, and then I just try to wrap it in a story that is about me on its face, but using some of those techniques that we talked about, realism, minimalism. I open it up to other people that are reading, because everybody that has a child understands what it's like to have a kid. You know what I mean? And you can't really, a lot of detail isn't necessary, when you're talking about your kids. You just kind of put them in a situation that they recognize, and then that story plays in their mind, and it's their own story. And then you just tell them what that other copywriter said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's enough. That's enough. It's enough to like...
It's curation instead of creation.
Right. Well, it's a little bit of both. It's like, that guy said it so well, I don't need to recreate it, but here's a story that's emotional, that's going to make you remember this article, and hopefully, you'll remember those two things together. And I guess that's how it works.
For the folks listening, watching, that want to be better writers, better storytellers, what advice would you give them?
Get better at noticing, get better at slowing down and taking a beat, stop talking so much. There's this movement called slow looking, where people go to a museum and the assignment is just to sit there and look at a piece of art for 3 hours and just look at it and see what you see and notice just notice what you notice. And in one way, it's like an exercise in the patience necessary to do that. And in another way, it illuminates everything that's inside of that work of art that you don't notice on the first go. You know what I mean? You don't see it right away. And the longer you look at it, the more it opens up to you. And I think it's analogous to life. The longer you look at a scene in real life or study a room in real life, the more it opens up to you. And that's where those stories are. And that's where those little tidbits that everybody knows but doesn't really think about all the time. That's where they live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think, again, the words authentic and unfortunately empathy have become cliche, but what you're really saying is to have empathy, but to get to the empathy is you have to really slow down, put yourself in their shoes, think about how do they think, how do they feel in this moment. And when I think about one of my strengths and why I think I'm decent and why I called my company The Reader, other than the pun, is because it's all about the reader. And if you're able to read a piece of content, whether it's something you wrote or something you're editing on behalf of your team or something, is at every sentence, can you find points where, yes, this is still relevant, or no, we're going off track, or actually this isn't where you went isn't what's going on in my head. That's not the objection I had. The objection I had is X, and you went, I went left, you went right. And so being able to be so aware to know your audience and to say, yes, I can pinpoint the moments that are on point and the moments that are starting to drift away, and then be able to aggregate that and come back, bring it back to the core focus. That, I think, self-awareness, or the awareness of the reader, being aware of the reader, is the superpower to being a great marketer and writer.
I agree.
I just try to sum up what you said.
No, I appreciate that. I think I never even really like vocalized that, to be honest.
I could tell. I could tell that was the first.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like,
but that's what we like, Eddie. You're right now. You're cringing on the inside because you're like, oh, that was the first time I didn't have a chance to mold it the way I want, and I'm happy because I feel like you just gave me like some unmolded clay, and it made enough sense. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're ruminating. You're already spinning.
No, it's fine. But whatever. It is what it is. It is what it is.
I want to talk a little bit about very good copy, specifically the leap, because you were the chief. What were you? Copy chief, right? Copy chief, which is a title you don't really hear in B2B too much, if ever. You were at G2, won some awards. You were successful there, and then you decided to take the leap and go all in on verygoodcopy.com. So I'm curious to know a little bit about that leap. What was going through your mind, and what motivated you to say, hey, in the midst of the pandemic, I'm leaving the safety and stability of the 9-to-5 and going all in on my own thing?
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think I was lucky enough to work at a company that really supported very good copy and supported like me building something while I was working there.
Yeah, it's very important.
And I think it's an admirable thing for any company to do, is like, you know, if you have creators on your staff that are doing a certain discipline and they want to go out and build something in that discipline as well, let them do that, because, you know, they're growing, they're learning, and they're just going to take that growth, all those learnings, they're going to take it and apply it to their job. And so like I was doing well in my role, and I think a lot of my colleagues and a lot of like the superiors, a lot of my directors, the CMO, they saw a lot of what I was doing on the side in the work that I was creating at G2. So they were cool with that.
They were benefiting from it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think that I was growing very good copy while I was there. I was building it while I was there. I was growing my LinkedIn presence and my network while I was there. And I was getting opportunities while I was at G2, and I couldn't commit to any of them. I was taking on small projects here and there. But then eventually I got a big opportunity, and I thought, you know, this is something that I can, you know, this is something that's going to sustain me for several months. Like if I'm ever going to leave, like this is probably a pretty good time to do it. And so I just kind of like took this. It was kind of a leap of faith, but it wasn't. I was like, I know that I'm on stable ground here, and I know that this is only going to give me more time to build very good copy, and that's going to, you know, bring more opportunities, more leads my way. So that's why I left. Also because, you know, my wife, Kelsey, I mean, you know, she was very supportive. I obviously had this conversation with her. She was 100% behind me. You know, insurance, you know, we were married, like insurance wasn't really a problem. And like, if anything, you know, it's kind of a commentary on like, you know, America, like, dude, in a land of opportunity, you know, we're all split, you know, entrepreneurship is such a valued thing, you know, to prohibit people from doing that because it costs them $50,000 or $60,000 a year just to have, you know, just to pay for insurance. I mean, that's not cool. So like, you know, if you know, that's a whole nother bag, but yeah, there would be a lot more entrepreneurs if that wasn't the case.
A valid bag, and a true one. What were, I'm curious to get a little more detail though. Like, so you said it was not that much of a leap of faith because you had built something, right? And so that's advice I tell people all the time is like, don't leave your day job to go start net new. That's, unless 100%. You've got a lot of, I don't know, parents' money or something, yes, then good for you. Not my scenario.
Yes.
But what were those things you were looking at, those signals of the business to say, this is legit and I've got a good landing, you know, a landing pad, so to speak. So, you know, I don't know, you know, there's always the break, like probably lose a little money for a couple months while you scale the business up, right? So I'm just curious, like, was it, I don't know, revenue, lead flow? Like, what were the things you're looking at? Like, this is legit and I feel comfortable.
Yeah, it was the size of my network. And then based on the size of my network, the number of leads that were coming in. And it was also the consistency at which they were coming in. So I think I looked at those three factors. It's like, okay, I have this network. These are the leads that it's producing for me, and there's been this trend over the past year, and it's only been going up. So those data points made me feel much better. made everybody feel better.
Yeah, say supportive wife.
Yeah.
Network, which is like your followers, right? Like, your network, I'm guessing, is in person, but also online, right? Because it's like your reach. How much impact can I have? How many people see my work?
Yep.
How is that converting?
Yep.
And I like that you said you graze past it, but you're like, you watched it for like a year.
Yep.
And you're like, it's growing and it's consistent. I don't know if it was consistent every single month, but overall. So you're like, look, I have a growing business. And it sounds like you got to the point where it's like almost, I don't know, it might be a leap to stretch for you, but like almost irresponsible not to go do it full time. Because you're like, look, if I just dedicated more time to this, I'll probably be better off. In a year, I'll be better off all in on very good copy than if I stayed in my current job.
That sums it up, dude. I mean, really, it was just a matter of like, hey, how's this trending? It's trending well. Let's just put more fuel on the fire. And that, like, fuel for me was just time, equity, effort. It wasn't a very expensive business. It wasn't expensive at all.
Is there anything you would have done differently in terms of the leap?
Probably not the way that I left. I mean, it was smooth, and I felt very fortunate, very, very grateful. To my people, and also to my audience and my network. I mean, there was just a lot of support, and also from like my colleagues, the people that I worked with at G2, everybody that helped me grow very good copy. My mentor, he was my VP of marketing, then he's still a mentor of mine, Adam Goyette. My buddy Jesse Rowe. I mean, those people showed me, they taught me growth, and it evolved and developed over time, but they were extremely supportive at first. So, I really couldn't ask for a better scenario.
I have a side hustle. I love when people have a side hustle, and I really love when they go all in on it. So that's why I like to spend time here. Do you have any kind of final words of advice for folks listening who maybe want to start or scale or go all in on their side hustle?
I think what you said is very valid. I mean, don't do it until you're ready, until you have stable ground, until you have a platform to stand on, and until you have that confidence. Because the worst thing is trying to balance a creative endeavor and creative work with, the economics of that. That's really hard, and it takes away a lot of the joy and the pleasure from doing that creative work. So if you have a full-time job, do your best to balance those things. And sometimes that balance requires time and, kind of stretching out the process. Mm-hmm. And, maybe it won't happen in a month or a year. It certainly wasn't like that for me. And it wasn't like that for a lot of people that I know. So it takes time, and I think it's a long haul endeavor, and you just have to be prepared for that. But yeah, don't go all in until you're ready.
Well, the final thing I want to say, I almost forgot, is you got the book coming out. So can you give us a quick plug? What's it about, and when can folks get it?
Yeah, the book is coming out soon. It'll be here in spring 2024, so like now-ish.
By the time this airs, around now. We'll put the link in the notes if it's live.
Hopefully. I'm just building the wait list for it right now and editing it. And it's really like the best of verygoodcopy.com. And it's in print. And it's something that a lot of folks have been asking for a physical version of my work. And so I've been, what's interesting is I go back and I'm editing a lot of my older stuff, and it's so crazy how much my writing has changed and how much, for lack of a better word, like better it's become. Yeah. So I have to like edit it to a different standard. So it's just taking time, but, yeah, it'll be here soon, and I appreciate you mentioning it.
Of course, man. Well, I could hang out with you all day. And
you are, bro.
And we have hung out a lot. We have hung out a lot so far.
You will be.
But I want to say thanks, man, for stopping by, sharing your wisdom, your experience, dropping gems, as I like to say. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming by and spending time.
Thank you for having me. And I admire everything that you've done here. I could never do this. Oh, this is like, there's so many moving pieces here, so many logistics, so many people involved, so many talented people involved. And you quarterback this whole thing, and you orchestrated this whole thing. And so I'm just lucky to be a part of it and grateful to be a part of it. And so, I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you saying that. We'll go and wrap right there. After every conversation, I reflect on my guest's advice and decide how I'm going to put it into action to grow my career, brand, and business. This conversation was a real game changer for me because Eddie totally transformed how I think about my relationships with growth and craft. Here are my 3 favorite takeaways. First, if you notice your work is stolen online, confront the plagiarist privately and explain your position. Offer them to give you credit and remove the post to remedy the situation. Second, it's not just okay, it's a smart idea to pause your growth efforts periodically to work on your craft. This is how you maintain a long, creative career without burning out. And third, a proven way to turn your readers into raving fans is to tell stories that evoke emotion. Let them into your world and relate to them at a personal level through your experiences. Our conversation today gave me the confidence to be more bold in my work, and I hope you feel the same. All right, if you're still listening, you must really crave growth, and I respect that. And you don't have to wait until next week's episode for more marketing advice. There are 3 ways I can help you scale your content right now. Every Saturday morning, I publish a newsletter where you'll get content tips and strategies for growing your career, brand, and business. Subscribe now to join thousands of readers. Just tap the link in the show notes. My ebook, Content That Converts, shows you how to confidently grow your reach and audience. This expansive digital playbook, packed with tips, techniques, and examples, reveals the exact strategies and step-by-step processes for converting attention into audience growth and sales. To buy your copy, hit the link in the show notes. You're seeing a pattern. And if you'd like to sponsor this show or partner with The Reader, email me at yo@thereader.co. Yes, that's yo@thereader.co. That's a wrap for now. And if you like the show, go ahead and give us that 5-star rating on Apple. It helps us grow.